I had always thought my life was solid, quiet, predictable, even comforting. I taught business administration at the university in Denver. Lucas and I had been married for 17 years. From the outside, we were one of those couples people pointed to and said, they've got it figured out. We had a modest home in the suburbs, a standing Friday night routine, and matching coffee mugs we'd bought on our honeymoon in Italy. We never had children by choice, we used to say. It had felt right at the time. Our lives were full enough. Faculty dinners, hikes in the Rockies, lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper in bed. But looking back, I wonder if that fullness was real or just a carefully constructed illusion. Because everything that looked perfect from the outside was about to come undone. It started on a Tuesday evening in March, the kind of evening that disappears into memory unless something marks it. Lucas was in the shower, humming off-key to himself, and I was folding a basket of laundry in the bedroom. The scent of lavender fabric softener hung in the air, the kind of detail you only remember when everything changes. His phone pinged on the nightstand. Nothing unusual. He got messages all the time. But something, call it instinct, call it fate, made me glance over. The screen lit up with a preview. Table for two confirmed at Lumiere, Friday at 7:30 p.m. window seat, as requested. She'll love it. I stared at it, not fully breathing. Lumiere. My heart skipped. That was our place. We had talked about going there for our 10th anniversary. Lucas had even made the reservation, but then canceled at the last minute, saying things were tight financially. It's just a restaurant, Clara, he'd said, brushing it off with a kiss on my temple. We'll go another time. Only we never did. And now here it was booked and confirmed for someone else. She'll love it. I stood frozen for a full minute. My hand still held one of his undershirts, half folded. My mind raced, but my body stayed still. I wasn't the type to snoop. Never had been. I'd always believed that trust meant not needing to look. But something inside me cracked, not loudly, not violently, but like a pane of glass beneath slow, deliberate pressure. I picked up the phone. His passcode hadn't changed. It was still our wedding date, September 14th. I tapped it in. My hands weren't even shaking. I was too calm, too quiet, like the moment before a storm breaks. Straight to messages. And there she was, Sophie. Younger. Bubbly. Too many emojis. Her text sparkled with exclamation marks and hearts, and inside jokes I didn't understand. She sent him selfies, playful ones, sultry ones, ones where she wrote Lou in lipstick on her bathroom mirror. My stomach twisted. He called her Angel. She called him my man. They had inside jokes. Playlists. A whole secret life built in the cracks of mine. I kept scrolling. The affair had started almost a year ago. 12 months of lies, of excuses and working late, of business trips that didn't add up. Every unexplained charge on our credit card, every vague apology, every forgotten anniversary, it all snapped into place like puzzle pieces I hadn't realized were missing. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just placed the phone back on the nightstand, folded the last t-shirt, and finished the laundry. When Lucas came out of the shower, wrapped in a towel and humming like nothing had changed, I smiled at him. Want some tea before bed? I asked. He said yes. Kissed my cheek. Told me he was exhausted from the faculty board meeting. I nodded. Listened. Responded. All while a storm began to form in the quiet center of me. That night, I lay beside him in bed, eyes open, watching the ceiling fan cast slow-moving shadows across the room. His breathing turned soft and rhythmic. He reached for my hand in the dark, and I let him. Not because I forgave him. Not because I was in denial. But I needed more time. I wasn't going to blow up my life without a plan. The next morning, I rose before him. I made breakfast, his favorite, eggs over easy, toast with raspberry jam, and a splash of cream in his coffee. I kissed his cheek as he left for work. Then I opened my laptop and typed a formal request for a short leave of absence from the university. Not to fall apart, but to prepare. The next 3 days passed in a haze of forced smiles and robotic routines. I answered emails, took a Zoom meeting with my department, picked up groceries. all while pretending not to notice the cold hollowness spreading through my chest. But underneath the stillness, I was moving. Quietly. Deliberately. I started with Sophie. I didn't know her last name, but thanks to their text conversations, I had enough clues to start digging. She mentioned her yoga studio, her dog's name, a recent trip to Palm Springs. Within an hour on Instagram, I found her account, open to the public, of course. Dozens of filtered posts, brunches, beach selfies, gym mirror shots, inspirational quotes. She looked mid to late 20s. Blonde, pretty, and always posing like she was waiting for someone to notice. And then there it was. A wedding photo. Her husband stood beside her, tall and well-dressed, his smile confident but soft. His name was tagged in the caption, Ethan Ward, architect. I clicked on his profile. He worked for a firm in Denver I actually knew, Ward Plus Steel Design. They had renovated the Civic Library downtown. I had always admired their work. So this was the man she came home to after sending my husband half-nude selfies and lipstick notes. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. I felt something cooler. Sharper. I found Ethan's professional website and his contact email, and I wrote him a message. Subject: Leadership Dinner Invitation, Lumiere. Dear Mr. Ward, I'm a business lecturer at Denver State University and have long admired your firm's architectural contributions to the city. We're organizing a small private dinner for potential guest speakers for our fall leadership series, and I would love to invite you as our guest. It's informal, just a few of us. We've reserved a table at Lumiere this Friday at 7:30 p.m. by the window. Please let me know if you're available. Warm regards, Clara Wills. It felt surreal sending it, like I was stepping into someone else's life. But I knew what I was doing. The next morning, his reply was sitting in my inbox. Thank you for the kind invitation, Ms. Wills. I'd be happy to join you. Lumiere is a lovely choice. See you Friday. I closed my laptop. My hands were steady. Step 1, complete. Step 2 was trickier. I called Lumiere and asked for a specific favor. I explained to the hostess that I had a reservation at 7:30 and wanted to be seated near another guest arriving at the same time, Mr. Lucas Wills. It's a quiet surprise, I said. She laughed, imagining something sweet and romantic. Of course, ma'am, she said. We'll take care of it. She had no idea. By Friday, I wasn't nervous. I felt clear. I wore a navy silk dress that hugged my frame gently, with silver earrings, and my hair swept back into a simple twist. Not flashy. Not for him. Just enough to remind myself who I was and who I had always been. Not just a wife. Not just a fool. But a woman who had built a life, who had trusted deeply, and who now, finally, saw the truth. I arrived a few minutes early. The hostess at Lumiere greeted me with a knowing smile, as if I were just another woman in love treating a guest to an evening out. Your table is just over here, she said softly, leading me to a small table near the tall window at the edge of the main dining room. It was cozy and elegant, and only a few feet from another table that was, according to her, reserved for a Mr. Lucas Wills. I sat down, smoothed the front of my navy dress, and ordered a glass of sparkling water. The bubbles fizzed quietly against the glass. I sipped it slowly, letting it cool the storm in my chest. The candlelight flickered. A violinist in the corner played something soft, slow, and romantic. Everything was perfect. Almost too perfect. Then at 7:30 on the dot, Ethan arrived. He walked in with calm confidence, his tall frame moving easily through the dim lighting. Up close, he had a steady presence, the kind of composure that came from years of responsibility. His salt and pepper hair made him look distinguished, and his navy blazer matched mine in a strange, unplanned coincidence. He smiled politely as he reached the table. Ms. Wills. Clara, I said, rising to shake his hand.
Ethan.
Thank you for the invitation. His voice was smooth, warm. I could see why people trusted him with blueprints and city skylines. It's nice to finally meet you, I replied, gesturing to the seat across from me. He sat down, thanked the hostess as she poured him water, and turned back to me. We began talking about architecture, about design philosophy, and about education. He spoke with passion about rebuilding Denver's forgotten neighborhoods and incorporating sustainable elements into public spaces. I shared stories of students and their ambitious projects and the way teaching reminded me of constant growth. It was easy, comfortable. Ethan didn't know why he was here, not yet. And I didn't rush. I wanted the truth to arrive like a sunrise, not with drama, but with slow, undeniable light. Then at 7:42 p.m., it happened. I heard his voice first. Lucas. Soft and low, saying something I couldn't make out, followed by Sophie's musical laugh. I didn't need to turn. I could feel him before I saw him. But I did look. And there he was, my husband, walking through the same entrance Ethan had used minutes before, dressed in the charcoal blazer I'd bought him for our last anniversary. His tie was loosened just slightly, casual but polished. His arm was linked with Sophie's, her red dress practically painted on, her lips glossed like she was heading to a magazine shoot. Lucas stopped mid-step when he saw me. His face didn't register confusion first, it registered recognition. Then fear. Sophie, noticing his pause, followed his line of sight until her eyes locked with mine. Her laughter died on her lips. For one suspended second, the world narrowed to just the four of us. No sounds. No movement. Just flickering candlelight, one long exhale of disbelief, and truth cracking the air like thunder far in the distance. I didn't flinch. I met Lucas's eyes. Then Sophie's. Not a glare, not a smug look, just a quiet gaze filled with clarity. A gaze that said, I know. Then I turned back to Ethan, placed a gentle hand on the table, and stood up. If you'll excuse me, I said softly. I didn't run. I didn't storm out. I walked with steady heels past Lucas and Sophie, past the mirrored wine wall, and out into the entrance hallway lined with white orchids. The air outside the dining area was cooler. I found myself in front of a large mirror near the restroom entrance, pretending to adjust an earring. But I wasn't fixing anything. I was grounding myself, steadying my heart. Then came the sound of heels. Quick. Sharp. Sophie. I didn't turn right away. She came up behind me, her steps faltering as she approached. Her breath was shallow. Her voice is almost childlike. Clara. I turned slowly, taking in her carefully curated appearance, hair curled, skin glowing, that red dress clinging like it had something to prove. Her expression flickered between panic and pity. She had no right to wear either. You shouldn't be here, she said, her tone more accusation than regret. I raised an eyebrow. Funny. I booked the table first. She opened her mouth again. Maybe to justify herself. Maybe to play innocent. I didn't give her the chance. I imagine this wasn't what you pictured tonight, I said calmly. Lumiere, candlelight, stolen glances. But then again, everything you two built was already borrowed, wasn't it? Her face flushed. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I interrupted gently. You just didn't think it would follow you into the mirror. Behind her, footsteps again. Lucas. He looked more like a ghost than a man. His eyes darted from me to Sophie, then to the edge of the hallway, and that's when Ethan appeared, standing silently in the doorway. Lucas blinked as the pieces fell into place. Ethan's expression didn't change. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even frowning. But his stillness radiated heartbreak. Well, I said softly, since everyone's here, allow me to make the introductions. I gestured like we were at a polite networking mixer. Ethan, meet Lucas, my husband. Lucas, this is Ethan, Sophie's husband. Sophie visibly wobbled. Lucas swayed slightly, as if bracing for a punch. Ethan said nothing, his eyes fixed on Sophie, his jaw tense, but his shoulders squared. There was no screaming, no name-calling, just the quiet ruin of denial. I thought it might be nice if we all had dinner, I added casually, seeing as we've all been part of the same story for quite some time now. I turned, walked back into the restaurant, and asked the hostess for a private room. She nodded, confused but courteous. 10 minutes later, we were seated 4 chairs, 4 glasses, 1 bottle of wine. The silence was thick, awkward, drenched in unspoken truths. The server arrived, and I ordered wine for the table. When the glasses were poured, I raised mine gently. To truth, I said. Long delayed, but finally served. Nobody else raised their glass. I set mine down and folded my hands on the table. I found out Tuesday night, I began, my eyes locked on Lucas. You were in the shower. Your phone pinged. Lumiere, 7:30 p.m., window seat. The same table we never made it to on our 10th anniversary. He looked down, ashamed. Sophie's expression was blank. I used our wedding date to unlock your phone, I continued. Still sweet, isn't it? That was probably the last thing you gave me that stayed the same. Lucas winced. Ethan sat perfectly still. Sophie finally spoke, her voice fragile. Clara, I didn't mean for it to. You didn't mean for it to what? I asked, tilting my head. To reduce our marriages to shadows? To build an affair on stolen moments and whispered lies? You didn't mean to destroy trust. Her eyes welled with tears. She reached for Ethan's hand, but he pulled away. You two wanted thrill, I said. A new spark. Something selfish and shallow. And now you get the part you didn't plan for, consequences. I looked at Ethan. I didn't do this to hurt you, I said gently. But I thought you deserved the truth too. He nodded. Slowly. Silently. And for the first time that night, his eyes met mine not with pain, but with understanding. Lucas opened his mouth, maybe to explain, maybe to beg, but I wasn't interested. Clara, he began, voice soft and shaky. No, I said, my tone cutting through the air like a blade. You don't get to narrate this anymore. You had a whole year to speak. I'm speaking now. He closed his mouth. His shoulders slumped. Silence fell again, thick and choking. I turned to Ethan, locking eyes with him. I didn't bring you here to hurt you. I promise. But I thought you deserved to know. Just like I did. Ethan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained level. Thank you for not letting me stay in the dark. I saw the flicker of betrayal flash across his face, the kind that sinks in slow and deep, like water soaking into wood. He had given Sophie everything, his time, his belief, his love, and she had thrown it away for secrets in hotel rooms and lipstick-smudged selfies. The rest of the meal was silent. The plates sat mostly untouched. The food, once elegant and beautifully plated, now looked irrelevant, useless. Lucas pushed a fork around in circles. Sophie stared at her wine, but never lifted the glass. Ethan sat still, his expression unreadable. And I breathed. For the first time in months, I breathed without feeling like I was inhaling lies. When the plates were finally cleared, I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope I'd prepared earlier. I slid a hotel keycard across the white linen tablecloth, stopping it in front of Lucas. There's a room booked for you at the Westin Grand. Suite 1104. It's already paid for, I said calmly. Your suitcase is there. I packed the basics. You have until Monday to be out of the house. Lucas stared at the key like it might burn him if he touched it. Clara, he murmured. But I didn't wait for whatever excuse or plea would come next. I stood and turned toward Ethan. Would you mind walking me down? He stood without hesitation. As we walked to the elevator, I felt the finality sink in. I wasn't walking away from dinner. I was walking out of 17 years of my life. The lobby was quiet, the city humming just beyond the glass doors. Reflections from streetlights painted long streaks of silver across the marble floors. I paused near the entrance, letting the weight of the evening settle into my bones. I'm sorry, I said softly, looking at Ethan. For everything. For how you had to find out. For all of it. He gave a sad smile, full of something too mature to be bitterness. Don't be. If anything, I'm grateful it came from someone with dignity. We stood there, just breathing in the stillness.
It wasn't romantic.
It wasn't dramatic. It was real. Just two people whose hearts had been split by the same fault line, finally standing on solid ground. You didn't just expose them tonight, Ethan said quietly, eyes on the glass door. You freed both of us. I nodded, blinking back the last of my tears. And then I walked away. Taller. lighter, finished. I didn't fall apart right away. I went on autopilot. I closed joint accounts, changed the locks, forwarded mail. I even called the cable company and had them remove Lucas's favorite sports package from the plan.
Petty?
Maybe, but necessary. At work, I was polite, professional. My colleagues asked about my weekend, and I simply said it was clarifying. No one pushed further. But when I got home, now redefined by the absence of his shoes at the door and the silence in the closet, I allowed myself to fall apart. The crying came in waves. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just quiet, breathless moments when the grief of time wasted washed over me like cold water. I didn't cry for Lucas. I cried for the woman I had been. For every lonely birthday I had shrugged off. For every apology I had accepted because I was too tired to ask why it had been needed in the first place. But even the tears faded. 2 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday evening, there was a knock on my door. I hesitated, unsure who it could be. Then I opened it, and there stood Ethan. No flowers. No speech. Just 2 takeaway coffees and a calm, familiar look. "I figured you might not want to be alone tonight," he said simply. I stepped aside, and he walked in. We didn't talk at first. We sat on the couch, sipping our drinks, the sound of rain gently tapping the windows. The silence wasn't awkward. It was kind. Eventually, I spoke. "You'd think it would have hurt more," I said, staring into my cup. "The betrayal. The lying. But it's time I can't stop grieving. The years. The patience. The faith." Ethan nodded slowly. "That's what I've been struggling with, too. Not what she did, but what I gave while she was doing it." He told me about the art studio he'd built for Sophie. He'd worked extra hours to pay for gallery fees. He believed in her before she believed in herself. And how, somewhere along the way, he became invisible to her. I told him about the nights I stayed up late grading papers alone while Lucas claimed he was networking. How I once waited 2 hours at a restaurant for our anniversary dinner, only for him to cancel last minute because of a client emergency. We talked for hours, not as victims, not as broken people, just as 2 human beings rediscovering honesty. That night gave me courage. The next morning, I filed for divorce. Lucas didn't take it well. He sent emails, voicemails, long, rambling messages that swung from apology to denial. He showed up at my building once, holding a box of old photographs and a pathetic bouquet of lilies. 17 years, Clara," he said, eyes red. "You can't throw that away." I looked at the box. A picture of us from our honeymoon sat on top, me smiling, him looking at the camera with that same perfect mask. "I'm not throwing anything away," I said softly. "I already did. Years ago. Every time I accepted a lie just to keep the peace." He didn't fight after that. He just faded. Word got around. Lucas's shine began to dim. Sophie had quietly left the city. Rumors said she was staying with her sister in California. Without her, Lucas wasn't charming anymore. Just a man with a bad story attached to his name. His work suffered. His confidence cracked. He lost the promotion he'd been gunning for. His name stopped showing up on leadership memos. No one talked behind his back. They didn't have to. The silence said enough. I didn't post about it. Didn't rage online. I let the quiet speak for itself. My world didn't need to know every detail. I wasn't seeking pity. I was finding peace. And slowly I did. I returned to campus with more energy than I'd felt in years. I updated my lecture slides, added new case studies, invited more guest speakers, especially women leaders who'd built their careers on resilience and grace. My students started noticing. "You seem different," Professor Wills once said. "Happier." "I think I am," I replied. I signed up for a photography course, one weekend, something I had always wanted to do. Sunday mornings became mine again. I wandered the city with my camera, looking at light differently, looking at myself differently. Ethan and I stayed in touch. Nothing rushed, nothing labeled, just quiet moments, coffee, the occasional walk, conversations about life. We didn't need to promise anything. We were simply two people learning how not to disappear into someone else ever again. One morning, nearly a year after the night everything changed, I found myself sitting across from Ethan at our usual cafe, the one with the crooked chairs and the best almond croissants in Denver. We had fallen into a rhythm that didn't need definition. We met once or twice a week, sometimes for breakfast, for an afternoon walk, just to sit in silence and know we weren't alone in the world. That morning, the sun filtered softly through the windows, casting a golden hue over the table between us. I stirred honey into my tea and said, I used to think being alone meant I'd failed, that I was too difficult to love or too easy to leave.
But now,
I think it means I finally got it right. Ethan smiled in that quiet, steady way of his. You're not alone, he said simply. And he was right. I wasn't lonely. I was whole. A year can pass in silence when you stop measuring time by someone else's presence. Mine had. It didn't rush forward with grand reinventions or dramatic milestones. It moved gently, like waves shaping stone, moment by moment, breath by breath. I didn't rebuild my life in some cinematic montage. I rebuilt it in small choices that began to stack into something solid. I stopped sleeping on one side of the bed. I lit candles for myself on quiet nights. I bought flowers just because I liked how they looked in the hallway. I framed my favorite photographs, not of people, but of light, of moments. I learned to enjoy my own company, and in doing so, I stopped waiting for someone to arrive and validate my existence. And then, almost without noticing it, a full 12 months had passed since the dinner at Lumiere. The university was hosting a retirement event for one of our most respected professors, Dr. Miriam Hellman, who had taught organizational leadership for 37 years. The faculty had chosen the historic library building downtown for the celebration. It was an elegant, candlelit affair, filled with laughter, soft jazz music, and warm clinking of glasses. I wore a navy dress again, not because of the symbolism, but because it made me feel grounded. I arrived with confidence, walking into a room full of people who had once known a quieter, more reserved version of me.
I smiled easily now.
I laughed freely. I didn't scan the room for a familiar face, didn't wonder who was watching. I didn't carry invisible weight anymore. Somewhere in those 12 months, I had stepped into the woman I was always meant to be. Then, through the soft murmur of voices and gentle music, I saw him. Lucas. He was standing at the back of the room, holding a glass of red wine, speaking to one of the younger lecturers. He looked older. Not in years, exactly, but in something else. Something heavier in the way his shoulders sloped, something quieter in the way he held his glass. His hair had thinned slightly at the temples. His smile was polite but lacked its former shine. The mask he had worn so well was gone now. He looked like someone who had finally stopped pretending. He turned his head and saw me. For a second, our eyes locked. And everything the years, the betrayal, the silence, hung between us like a curtain about to drop. He walked over slowly,
Carefully.
like a man approaching the edge of a story he no longer belonged in. Hi, Clara, he said, voice quiet and unsure. Hi, Lucas. He looked around the room, maybe trying to place himself in this version of my life. You look well. I am, I said. And I meant it. He hesitated, then nodded. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. For what I threw away. You didn't deserve that. And you never made me feel small. I just wasn't man enough to admit I was the one who was lost. His words didn't sting like I imagined they might. They didn't hit with anger or ignite old wounds. They just landed, soft and real, like leaves falling after a long season. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. He nodded again, and for once, there was no pretense in his eyes. I hope you're happy, he said after a moment. I am, I replied, this time with a soft smile. And I hope you find that too. Someone brushed past us, and he stepped aside. I thought he might say more, but instead, he simply nodded and walked away. No fanfare, no lingering glance. Just a quiet exit, like a page turning. Then, behind me, A familiar voice broke through the hum of the room. "There you are," Ethan said, holding out a glass of water and raising one brow. "Still hate crowds?" "Always," I said, laughing as I took the glass. "But you make it bearable." He looked past me, watching Lucas retreat into the background, then met my eyes again.
His voice softened.
"Everything okay?" I nodded. "Better than okay." We found a quiet corner where we could watch the rest of the celebration unfold. Colleagues shared stories about Dr. Hellman, her wit, her brilliance, her unwavering patience with underprepared grad students. The library was alive with memory and warmth, the walls holding generations of moments like pressed flowers in a book. Later, when the jazz band began to play and a few couples moved to the center of the room, Ethan turned to me and extended a hand. I raised an eyebrow. "I didn't know architects danced." "I don't," he said with a grin, "but I make exceptions for professors who carry too much grace in their shoes." I laughed, genuinely, and let him pull me in. We moved slowly. No dips, no dramatic spins. Just a simple dance. A soft rhythm. A conversation without words. His hand on my back was warm and steady. My head rested easily near his shoulder. I had never felt so comfortable in stillness before. As we swayed beneath the tall library ceilings, surrounded by flickering candles and the soft murmur of the evening, I realized something. Betrayal hadn't broken me. It had cleared the path. It had led me here, not to bitterness, but to balance. Not to revenge, but to rediscovery. To a version of myself that no longer needed to be chosen to feel worthy. I didn't need to be someone's wife to feel whole. I was Clara. I had rebuilt, brick by brick, day by day, not with rage or resentment, but with dignity, with kindness, with deliberate, quiet choices that stacked into a life worth living. As Ethan twirled me gently, the corners of his mouth lifting in that calm, familiar way, I didn't look back. Not once. I stayed rooted in the moment, grounded by every step it took to arrive there. Because I hadn't just survived. I had transformed. And I was never going back.